All right, let's jump right in. We're about to crack open one of the biggest divides in the mortgage world, something that really determines the fate of a home loan, conforming versus non-conforming. Let's figure out what that actually means. So what's the deal here? You hear these terms thrown around all the time, right? But understanding the line in the sand between them, well, that's the key to understanding how the entire mortgage market even works. And you know what? It's a lot simpler than you think. And it all comes down to who's making the rules. And who are these rule makers? Well, you just need to know two names. Meet the gatekeepers of the mortgage universe, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. These two organizations basically set the standards for the vast majority of mortgages here in the US. Think of them as the ultimate quality control for home loans. So, that brings us to our first big idea, the conforming loan. And honestly, the name says it all. It's a mortgage that conforms to the strict guidelines set by Fannie and Freddie. And because it meets their standards, the lender who made the loan can then sell it to them. That frees up a ton of cash so they can turn around and make more loans for more people. You know, the easiest way to picture this is to think of it as the standard route. It's the main highway for mortgages. It's well paved, clearly marked, and most people travel on it. For lenders, these loans are super predictable, which means they're lower risk and way easier to handle. It's the mainstream path, plain and simple. So what are the rules of this highway? Well, it's a very specific checklist. To get on this standard route, you're going to need a credit score of at least 620, usually. Your total debt compared to your income, your DTI, has to stay under 45%. And you can forget about winging it. You need full, verified documentation and an appraisal that is absolutely by the book. Okay, so what about everything else? Well, that's where the non-conforming loan comes into play. And the definition is just beautifully simple. It's any loan that fails to meet one or more of those Fannie and Freddie rules. And because it breaks the rules, it can't be sold to them. And this is exactly what they're for. If the conforming loan is the standard highway, think of the non-conforming loan as the custom route. It's the scenic, sometimes winding back road that's built for borrowers who are in special situations, for people who just don't fit in that standard box. And this custom route has a few different lanes you can take. The most famous one is probably the jumbo loan. That's for when you need to borrow more money than the standard limits allow. Then you've got portfolio loans, which is when a lender just decides to keep the loan for themselves. And you have all these niche programs like for self-employed people who might use bank statements instead of W-2s to prove their income. Okay, but here's the catch, and this is really the whole point. There's a fundamental trade-off. The huge pro of taking the custom route is flexibility. It can handle lower credit scores, higher debt, you name it. But that flexibility comes at a price. Lenders see more risk with these loans, and they bake that risk right into the deal with higher interest rates. All right, so we get the two different paths. Now let's really put them under the microscope. Time for a little side-by-side showdown. This table just makes it crystal clear, doesn't it? Conforming loans, they stay under the official loan limits and get sold to Fannie and Freddie. Non-conforming, they go above those limits and get sold to private investors or kept in-house. But just look at the pattern here. The stricter the rules for things like credit and DTI, the lower the rates and the lower the risk. It's that simple. More rules means less risk, which means it costs you less. Now, for my favorite part. How do you actually get all this information to stick in your brain? Let's go over a couple of quick memory hacks and tips to make sure you never forget this stuff. For conforming loans, the secret is right there in the name. We're just going to use the word CONFORM to lock this in. Let's break it down real fast. Just remember CONFORM. C is for a credit score of 620 plus. O is for being on the market, it's sellable. N is for normal loan limits. F for full documentation. And what do you get? O for often lower risk, which leads to R for rates that are lower. Boom. Simple. So what about non-conforming loans? For these, I want you to think of a totally different word. Juicy. Yeah, juicy. And why? Because for the lender, the yields, or the profits, are often higher or juicier. Let's spell it out. J is for jumbo loans. U is for unconventional underwriting. I is for those in-house portfolio loans. C is because the credit requirements are flexible. And what's the result of all that? Y. The yields for the lender are higher. That's what makes it so juicy for them. Okay, now lean in for this one. If you only remember one single thing from this whole explainer, please make it this. The number one, top of the list factor that makes a loan non-conforming is the loan limit. If the loan amount is just $1 over the conforming limit, it's non-conforming, period. End of story. Everything else is secondary. That is the key. So, to wrap this all up in a neat little bow, it really is that straightforward. The entire difference between these two massive categories of loans just boils down to one simple question. Does the loan play by Fannie and Freddie's rules or not? So now you know the rules of the game. You know the two main paths a mortgage can take in this country. And it kind of makes you think, doesn't it? Which path would your loan need to take? Thanks for tuning in.